Hi, guys. I'm going to go stand behind the podium because it's like, gives me a little bit of protectia, you know? No, it's fine. Hi, I'm Alex Clare, and it's very nice to be at the Sinai Indaba. We were in Cape Town earlier in the week, and we spent an amazing Shabbos here, so thank you for having us. It was, I say us, I'm not referring to myself in the royal we. My father-in-law came with me. He's a South African and hasn't been here for like 30 years. So thank you for making him feel so welcome. So I'm here to tell you my story, a little bit of my story anyway. It's up until this point. My name's Alex. I'm 29 years old. I'm from London in England. And yeah, I'm a professional musician. The shtick is usually that I'm a multi-platinum selling musician and ASCAP Songwriter of the Year. I don't really know what that means, but I'll tell you the story how that happened. I come from a very, very secular background, and in my late teens, early 20s, I started to ask questions, like most Bolsheviks, and one thing led to another, from beginning to learn Hebrew properly, to learning Shabbos, and learning kosher, the laws of these subjects, and genuinely learning how to learn Torah, something I really wanted to do, and I invested a lot of time in it, and became Shabbos observant. Now, I'll go back a little bit. When I was a teenager, I loved music. As a kid, I started playing trumpet at the age of 7. I started playing drums around the age of 10, 11. And before too long, I was playing in lots of bands when I was at high school. And it took up most of my time, nearly all of my time, in fact. And subsequently, I was very distracted. So distracted from my studies. And when I left school at 16, I decided that I wanted to be a musician. Now, I went to my parents and said I wanted to play music. Seemed like a really good idea to do. And they said, you know what, statistically, there's not such a good chance that you're going to succeed. So like, just get another qualification in something. So I went to chef school and I studied to be a chef. And I know, for some reason, musicians are always chefs and chefs are always musicians. And while I was in chef school, a band I was playing in that became quite well known in London, playing on the club scene and the different bars and the pubs and the open mic nights. And we got noticed and we got offered a publishing deal. Specifically, me personally, I wasn't really a musician, I was the drummer. You know, who's the person who hangs out with musicians, they say the drummer is. And I was that guy at the back. And for some reason, whenever I sang backing vocals, I would drown out the rest of my band. No one could ever hear anyone else singing because my voice was quite a lot louder. So I pursued this career. The band was terrible. It was an awful band, and it didn't really work out for us. But I stayed with the publishing company and became a songwriter, working for this company called Pure Groove Music, which had artists such as The Streets and Plan B and a lot of other UK urban acts. At around the age of 21, 22, I was living in Camden Town in northwest London, working as a songwriter. Doing a bit of moonlighting as a chef as well, and living with loads of musicians, loads of very driven, talented people who I realized were kind of obsessed with partying. Go out every night, go raving, go clubbing, play shows, go to award ceremonies. It was like a lifestyle that a lot of people had picked. And I realized that most of my friends were actually really depressed. I looked around and realized that people who were pursuing this lifestyle, for some reason, they weren't really happy. And the combination was on a Thursday night, I was sitting on a couch with a friend of mine, and he just burst out crying. And I remember sort of thinking, what's wrong with you? And I asked him, what's up? And he said he couldn't explain it. He couldn't explain why he was so sad. And then I realized that, whoa, maybe I'm really sad also. I realized that the aspirations that I'd set myself up for and the lifestyle I was living wasn't really making me particularly happy. Now, I'd been beginning to hang out with a lot of rabbis as a young adult, and was learning Torah and going to shul occasionally, but I wasn't quite Shomer Shabbos yet, and I wasn't quite keeping kosher properly yet, you know. That Friday, after that happened, I decided to go to spend Shabbos. Instead of going to the normal area of northwest London where I'd spend Shabbos, I went to Stamford Hill, which is the Haredi, it's like the Mea She'arim of London. And I walked into a shul, and I saw a Hasidic fellow there. And I said to him, excuse me, is there a Kabbalat Shabbat here this evening? And he said, you mean Mincha and Mariv? And I went, yeah. And he went, yeah, of course. He said, more importantly, where are you eating tonight? And I was probably just going to get the bus back to Camden Town. And he said, no, ridiculous. You're gonna eat by me, and more importantly, you're going to stay by me. And I began a relationship with different Hasidic communities around London and got quite involved. Now, around the same time that this happened, my music was on a steadily upward trajectory. I was playing in lots of bars, getting lots of attention, and before too long, after making an album which fused soul music and electronic music, I got offered a record deal, quite a substantial one with Island Records. Now, Island Records is a huge label. They've had acts including U2, Bob Marley, Florence and the Machine, Mumford & Sons. Huge list, a huge, artistically speaking, a very credible company. And I thought, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to make music for Island Records. And they signed me. Now, when I signed, I was keeping Shabbos. And I said to them, guys, something you've got to know about me is that Friday nights, I'm out the game. From Friday night to Sunday night, I'm out the game. And there'll be other days in the year also, I'm out the game. I can't work. My religion forbids me to work. And they were like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. They didn't quite understand that if you keep Shabbos, there's no alternative. There's Shabbos or there's Mechalel Shabbos. Just to keep Shabbos or to desecrate Shabbos, and there's no in-between gray areas, it doesn't work. They didn't get that. And they assumed as a young artist, when most young artists would give their right arm for certain opportunities, I wasn't going to do them. So they sent me all over the world. I went to New York, I went to Los Angeles, I went to New Orleans, I went to Kingston, Jamaica, worked with amazing musicians, and made an album which I was really proud of. A really nice piece of work that I'd invested a lot of time, a lot of effort. And when most of my friends were at university living off student loans, I was sleeping on people's couches all over Europe, playing concerts in terrible, terrible bars, learning my skill. So I thought, you know what, it's actually come to something, and now I have a record deal. It's great. I made my album. I was so proud of it. It was a great piece of work. I thought, anyway, if you're going to release something, you have to really love it. For some reason, no one else agreed. A couple of journalists did, which was nice, but no radio stations played my music. I didn't get any really substantial write-ups in any of the music press. Nothing really happened. And my record label thought, okay, we have to really start pushing this guy in terms of promo. So they put the feelers out, and for some reason, every piece of promo that I was offered came in on a Friday night. Every single piece of promo, every TV show, every radio show, every supporting concert fell on a Friday night. Now, I'd released my album in the springtime, and after a month or so, I got offered a tour with a young lady called Adele. Now, Adele at the time was probably the biggest singer in the world. She just won a whole bunch of Grammys and was the highest grossing artist of that year. And my record label had managed to wing it for me that I would support her on tour. It's going to be amazing. I looked at the dates, and it was Pesach. So I said to my record label guys, it's basically like a week of Shabbos. We've got 2 days of the Yomim Tovim, then in Chol HaMoed we had Shabbos smack bang in the middle, and then 2 more days of Yom Tov. I said, guys, on a 2-and-a-bit-week tour, I'm going to be out the game for at least a week of it, and I'm sorry, I don't think I'll do it. And then my record label realized that I was actually nuts. They were like, you're crazy. Do you know how many people would give their right arm, probably literally, to do this show? And I was like, yeah, it's really nice, and I'm very flattered, but I can't do it. And that's when they realized, when I said I was going on holiday, like taking holiday, they thought I was going to go sit on a beach in the Bahamas somewhere. They didn't realize that a Jewish holiday is a very, very holy thing, and you can't work on them. So the summer was in motion, and for some reason, some people in Romania and some people in Holland really liked my music. So I would go to Holland and Romania, and then back to London, then Holland and Romania, between these 3 places, and they were the only places where anyone was really interested. I had some music synced to like little adverts here and there and little TV shows, but nothing really to write home about. Summer came, summer went, played a few emerging artist stages at different festivals to like not much of a fanfare. And then before the end of the summer, it really started to pick up. Like people started like downloading my music, people started coming to my shows, I started to sell out gigs, which is brilliant. And then something fell in the way. Tishrei. The Jewish month of Tishrei is where we have Rosh Hashanah, and then we have Yom Kippur, and then we have Sukkot, and Shemini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. And I said to my record company, so you know how Pesach was like a week of Shabbos? I've got like a month of Shabbos. Just so you know. And they were like, uh-huh, okay, whatever, man. And that was it. They were like, okay, cool, fine, whatever, take a month off, you know. It's not going to make a difference. No one's buying your music anyway. So Rosh Hashanah davening, beautiful that year. Such a special davening. You know, trying to say to Hashem that I'm sorry for what I've done, and you know what, like, if there's any decrees put against me, let's try and like talk about it a little bit. Yom Kippur comes and goes. Yom Kippur davening, amazing. Praying that whatever decrees have been put on me, can you do me a favor, Ribono Shel Olam, and just get rid of them. It's okay. Motzi Yom Kippur. I come home, actually go to my friend's house where I was staying. I turned on my mobile phone, then break my fast. You know, that's the Seder nowadays. You get home, turn on your mobile phone, then break your fast. Like, obviously, what's happening in the world is more important than your stomach, so it's okay. And I see a text message. Now, Yom Kippur that year was on a Shabbos, and quite a lot of the industry I work in is a Jewish industry. Traditionally, there's a lot of Jews who work in the UK music industry, and those who aren't Jewish, they don't work Saturdays because they get so mad wasted on Friday night that by Saturday, they're like out the game. So I see a text message from my A&R man telling me to call him right away, which set alarm bells ringing. You're like, why would they call me on a Shabbos? It doesn't make sense. So I call him, and he says, Al, we've got an amazing opportunity for you. It's going to be a real game changer. It's a Radio 1 live lounge session. It's going to go out live on radio, live on TV, and it's going to give you exposure like you've never had before. I was like, that's really nice, guys. When is it? And they said, it's on Thursday. I went, oh, Thursday. Sukkot. I was like, guys, it's Sukkot. I can't do it. It's Sukkot. Like, you can't work on Sukkot. And my A&R man said, yeah, we know that. But if you don't do the show, I have to let you know that we're going to have to let you go. You have to let me go. And I said, okay. And then I remembered in the Machzor of the Yom Kippur davening and the Rosh Hashanah davening, we have a piyut, a liturgical Jewish poem called Unasani Toikef, made famous by Leonard Cohen in a song called Who by Fire. Now, Unasani Toikef deals with why, how, and when people are going to live or die. And it's pretty heavy, you know, it's who by, like fire, water, strangulation, beheading. It's a really heavy song, really heavy piyut that we say in the repetition of the Amida on Yom Kippur. And instead of davening it, I decided to read the commentaries. Now, the commentaries are fascinating in the Machzor, really, really, really interesting. And it tells you the story of the people who wrote these different songs. Now, the person who wrote Unasani Toikef was a man called Amnon. He lived in the 1000s in Germany, in Mainz. He was one of the Rishonim and one of the early Hasidei Ashkenaz, one of the first Rabbonim who really started building yeshivas in that part of the world. And yeah, was a very influential person who had a lot of protexia. Now, part of his protexia was a bishop. But one day, his protexia, this bishop, turned around to him and said, Amnon, convert to Christianity or I'll kill you. And Amnon, trying to buy himself a little bit of time, said to this bishop, can I have 3 days? Can I have 3 days? He left the meeting with the bishop. He had such a regret. He turned around, walked back into the chamber of the bishop and said to him, I'm sorry, like I'm a Jew. And if I have to be Moise Nefesh, if I have to die, I'll Kiddush Hashem. That's all I can do. I can't ever be anything but a Jew. That's what I am, and you'll just have to kill me. So the bishop said, okay, because you wasted my time and you procrastinated, he killed him in the most horrific way. The most horrific way. And while he was dying, on Yom Kippur, he came to the synagogue while he was dying from the wounds that inflicted on him, and he wrote previously and sung on the Sunday Tokef in the shul. Now, a year later, Erev Yom Kippur, he came to one of his colleagues and told him that if it's possible, to say the song that he had written on the Sunday Tokef. And ever since, this song has been part of the Jewish liturgy of Yom Kippur for most communities. So I read this story, and I knew that Amnon was obviously trying to tell me a little something. Like, it's okay. Like, if you've got to be Moise Nefesh, be Moise Nefesh. If you want to give over yourself and what's important to you for God and for Judaism, then that's what you have to do. And I said to my record label, I can't do it. I can't do it. And my record company began to fire me. They began the process of severing ties, the divorce proceedings for an artist from a record label. And pretty heavy sukkahs that year. And then about a month or so later, I was free of a contract. They'd fired me. I didn't have any money. They give you a huge amount of money when you make an album, by the way. Record companies give you a huge chunk of cash, but the problem is, when you've paid for your flights and for the studio time and, session musicians, it goes very quickly. Very little in the bank, and I didn't really know what to do, so I decided I've got a huge black mark against my name. No one's gonna want to listen to my music even though I've been dropped. In terms of integrity and in terms of critique, people are gonna be on my back. So I thought I'd step away from music for a while and go back to yeshiva. So before I left for yeshiva, I spoke to my rabbi and I said, Rabbi, I don't know what's happened. I made sacrifices for Judaism. I kept Shabbos. I kept kosher. I started learning Torah and I took it very seriously, and it's backfired. It's backfired. I've lost everything. Everything I've worked on in the last 10 years it's gone. And he said, you're right. But you should know that you're a little bit like Avraham Avinu. Didn't understand what he meant. And he explained that by the Akedah Yitzchak, Avraham Avinu was given a series of tests by Hashem to prove his worthiness and to prove that he should open up channels of blessing from the Ribono Shel Olam. The last, final, huge test was the Akedah Yitzchak. Now, the Akedah Yitzchak, you probably know the story that Avraham Avinu had waited till he was 100 years old to have children. He davened to Hashem to give him children so he could pass on his legacy of chesed, of kindness, of love, of monotheism, to tell the world that you have to be a good person, and more importantly, that you don't sacrifice your kids. Hashem told Avraham Avinu, tell people, don't sacrifice the kids. It's not such a good look, and you probably don't want to do it. What happens one day? Hashem turns to Avraham Avinu and says, "Yeah, Avraham, by the way, just take your son and shecht him, turn him into a korban for me." Avraham Avinu doesn't hesitate. The next morning, he packs his donkey, gets Yitzchak, his son, and they go up to where Yerushalayim is now, to Har HaBayis, and he goes to shecht him. He ties him up, and he says that he tries to shecht him. Now, in the process, we all know the story that Avraham Avinu was stopped by a malach from Hashem, and as a result of that willingness to give up everything that was so important to him, his whole life's mission and work was invested in his son, and he was willing to sacrifice it all. Why? Because Hashem told him to. That's the only reason. Hashem told him to. Now, obviously, he didn't shecht Yitzchak, as I said. A malach stopped him. And Hashem gave him a bracha. He gave him a blessing that his children should be as numerous as the dust of the shore and the stars in the sky. And because of that decision, ultimately, my rabbi said, every Jewish person, every single one of you here today, and through all the generations, is here because of that decision. It was the bracha that Hashem gave to Avraham Avinu, saying, you're willing to give up everything for me. And because of that, you'll be all right. I said, Rabbi, that's a lovely story. It's a beautiful story, and it's very holy. But practically speaking, I have no rent. I have no food in my fridge. I've got a little bit of cash I'm going to get myself to Israel with. And otherwise, I don't really know what to do. I really know what to do. So on my way to yeshiva, my rabbi said to me, you'll get siyata d'shemaya. In this world, you'll get help from Hashem. In this world, or in the next world, you'll get something. This is going to work out. I'm on my way to yeshiva, and I get an email from Microsoft. Interesting. Now, I'd had emails from other companies about pieces of music I'd done, and usually, when they use your music, they'll put it in a TV show for 10 seconds, and you hear a little clip, or they'll put it on an advert for a few seconds in the background, and no one really notices or cares. It's just background music, and I'd done plenty of these things. They pay a little bit of money, but nothing significant. And I got an email from Microsoft saying they wanted to use a piece of my music for an international ad campaign. I was like, whatever, okay, sure, go ahead, use it. I get another email saying that they're willing to pay £75,000 for the privilege. I'm like, oh, okay. Now, it wasn't going to go to me. I had a huge debt with my record label, massive debt, but at least it would go towards paying that off and maybe sort out my credit score some stage in the near future. I was like, okay, that's great. So they pay off a huge chunk of my record deal. And then I don't think anything more of it. I just think, it's a huge company. They've probably got more money than sense. They probably don't really care. They just, throw their cash about, whatever. And I went to yeshiva, and I was watching a movie with a friend of mine in the cinema, just before I left, actually. And suddenly I saw this advert, And I suddenly heard not just a little bit of my song, but like the opening 4 chords of my song, really loud in like Dolby, a surround sound. I was like, okay, wow, this is different. I looked at my friend like I didn't know this was going to happen. And shortly after I left for yeshiva. Now when I was in yeshiva, I got a phone call after a few weeks of being there saying that, yeah, my music was doing quite well. So well, in fact, that it was being played on every TV channel. That was a commercial channel in the world where Microsoft were advertising on that in that format. Every TV set, every movie theater in the world was at that time playing the IE9 advert, which included my music. As a result, it had something like 50 million Shazams. Shazam is an app that you use to recognize music that you don't necessarily know. And a lot of people had never heard this piece of music, 50 million to be precise around the world, were Shazamming this song Too Close. I was in yeshiva, and I spoke to my Rosh Yeshiva about it. I was like, this is a bit weird. He said, yeah, it's a bit strange. And suddenly it started going into the top 10 all over the world. It went to number 10, into the top 10 in America, and number 1 to the Billboard charts in America, Billboard alternative charts in America, number 4 in the UK. And the first big milestone was that I got a phone call while I'm in yeshiva, and my management company, not my record company, but the people who handle my business affairs, they phoned me up and said, Al, you've probably got to go to Germany tomorrow. I was like, why do I have to go to Germany tomorrow? He said, well, you're going to be number 1 there tomorrow. And it's true, I got off the plane from Jerusalem, I flew to Frankfurt, and the rep from the German wing of the record company told me that I was number 1. That song, over the next few months, sold 6 million copies. And the album that it was on sold just under 2 million copies worldwide. So it was quite a bizarre turn of events from having mamish like nothing, and sharing a bedroom in Jerusalem with some ants and some American Bokharim. I won't tell you which one's worse. From there, I went to like sleeping in 5-star hotels, and I spoke to my Rosh Yeshiva, and I said like something really bizarre has happened, and I feel like I should probably take care of it while there's something to take care of. And he agreed, and I'm on a sabbatical from yeshiva right now. I've got to go back soon, please God. And yeah, it was amazing. From like having absolutely nothing to suddenly having everything in the blink of an eye is an incredible thing. And when my Rav said you'll get Siyata D'Shemaya, you know, he wasn't wrong. What you have to be aware of is though when you get Siyata D'Shemaya in this world, it's kind of taken out from the cheshbon, from the credit from the world to come. So now I have to try and work really, really hard to up that balance in the next world as well. So yeah, thank you for having me. And it was a pleasure to speak to you today. I'd like to add, just before I welcome the next speaker, that, you know, music is an incredible thing. And as a musician, you have to understand, when we look at Tehillim, the last capital of Tehillim, I heard this from Rabbi Dishon. He said to me that the last capital of Tehillim doesn't express praise with words. It says that we have to express praise to Hashem with music, with the musical instruments, because the human emotions are limited by words. There's only so much we can express from our actual thoughts, whereas melody expresses the world of worship and a level of praise that goes beyond words. And with that in mind, I'd like to welcome a big hero of mine and an incredible musician who has a huge schus in bringing music down from this world, from that world into this, Mr. Yonatan Razel.
Wow. It's difficult to speak after this hero, so applause again for... So in a sense, my story is a little bit different, but then similar. Both artists, I believe, that try to combine trying to be true, worshiping of Hashem, and then art, doing our own art. In that sense, we may be brothers. But I'll elaborate that more later. So I'll share a little bit of my story with you, my journey. My name is Yonatan. I live in Israel. I was born in the States, father from Holland, mother from America. My father's side were many, many years in Holland, hundreds of years, actually even before the Portuguese, which is about at least 500, 600 years. My grandfather, from my father's side, was my cello teacher and Latin and Greek. He was a musician, and I had to learn Latin, which was terrible growing up, but the cello part was sweet. And my grandfather jumped off a train on the way to one of the camps in Holland and ran all night with no clothes to almost nothing on his body, and was saved miraculously, Baruch Hashem. And then decided to make Aliyah, come to Israel, and find a job in Israel. This is year 52. When he was here, in Israel, he was offered he got a telegram for the Queen asking him to come and be a private tutor for Latin and Greek for her daughters, Beatrix and something like that. The other one, I don't know her name. And my grandfather, who by the way was not a religious Jew, wrote back to her after 3 days of not sleeping, I'm a Jew and my place is in Israel. Thank you for the offer. And my grandfather started with nothing in Israel. And Baruch Hashem, he has many, many grandchildren and great-grandchildren. He just passed away a few years ago. But before he died, he called me to his bed and said, Yonatan, I feel like Yaakov, who ran away from his brother and had nothing on his body and then came back to meet his brother, had servants and money and fame. And that's when I composed the song Katonti Mikol HaChasadim Umikol HaEmet, which maybe later on, actually I did it yesterday, so I don't know. You'll hear it one day for me. And that's from my father's side. My mother's side was from America. My mother grew up in New York and was very musical also, but on the listener side. Singing wasn't her best, it wasn't her forte, but she went to Woodstock and still has the ticket on the top of her bed. It's part of who she is. And this couple, my father and my mother, both completely secular, meet in New York about 40 years ago. And my father says to my mother, would you like to go out tomorrow? And she's like, it's Yom Kippur, you know. So that's how far away he was and they were. But they decided to make Aliyah. I was born in the States, and my parents decided to make Aliyah. But they choose a very specific neighborhood, which is called Nachlaot. It's a neighborhood mostly of Eastern Jews, Moroccans, Yemenites, Sephardim, Persians. And for some reason, this is a very, very poor neighborhood, no streets, no pavements. It's a very, very simple way of growing up, even though both my parents were doctors of psychology, still are. But they wanted to feel Israel as it is. And so I grew up in this kind of interesting triangle. On one hand, a lot of classical music. My father was insisting of us practicing 3-4 hours a day as children already. Recently I found stuff that I was composing when I was 5 or 6 years old. And I was practicing for hours every day. And on the other hand, my mother's Stevie Wonder, Bob Dylan, Beatles, Rolling Stone, music beating out. And then the third part of the triangle is the Sephardi world, the music of the Selichot, the Piyutim, the liturgical Sephardi music that was surrounding my childhood. And with that happening, my family started to become religious, slowly going to shul, slowly feeling closer to Judaism. It was my father, it was actually also me. I was a spiritual child, I think. I felt connected to Hashem in this weird way when I was about 8 or 9, speaking and davening. And basically when I was about 13, I had to make a decision which was crucial to my life. I was already composing and conducting and playing piano 5-6 hours a day, classical pieces, Chopin, Mozart, Beethoven, Debussy, composing symphonies. And my family was becoming more and more religious. So I had to make a decision to go to like a religious school, yeshiva, or to go to a music school. And that moment I made a decision to go to a music school, which was, I think, what created the way I feel about myself. Because the same time we were becoming more and more the family was more and more learning, but I was in the most secular school you could imagine, but getting very, very important tools in music, harmony, counterpoint, orchestration, a lot of opportunities to compose and just pursue my art. And those years between 13 and 18, I was actually a little bit torn. On one hand, I wanted to become more religious, more Jewish. I wanted to learn more. But then my life was full of music, of a lot of culture, a lot of concerts, opportunities. I met Leonard Bernstein when I was 15, playing my symphonies, my music for him. I met composers. I flew around the world. And then again, I was living in a completely secular world. I was the only religious boy in high school. And my tendency was I was connected to Hashem, but then around me was completely secular life. Then I went to the army, and after the army, before that I started my degree in conducting in the Rubin Academy. And while I did the army, I finished that degree. And after the army, I started conducting symphony orchestras around the world, in Israel, Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra. And then I got a real big opportunity. I was accepted to Cambridge University to do my master's degree in conducting and composing, and I went there, and I suddenly felt this crack. I felt, this is not for me. This is a lot of music, modern music. This is composing very super duper music. It doesn't connect, not to my Judaism, and not to other people around me, and I felt it's not for me. And I did like 180 degrees, and I said, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm going to be a shepherd. That was my dream for many years. And I stopped playing music for a few years, and I lived on a farm. I was 23 years old. And I started learning Torah, learning about myself, and searching for my way. Those years, I started composing music, using the piano, the guitar, my own language, so to speak. But I think then again, I was trying to form a kind of combination between the quest, the search for truth, for Hashem, and using the vessels of classical music. I didn't refute the chokhmah, the wisdom of the harmony, the counterpoint, the orchestration. A lot of, like we say, chokhmah b'goyim ta'amin. There's a lot of beauty in the art out there, and plastic art, in musical art, in drama, and I didn't refute that. But I felt I wanted to use these instruments that I was taught very, very thoroughly. I wanted to use them in the language of kedusha, the language of holiness. And basically, a few years later, I got married, and I started with my wife slowly to compose my songs and putting them out there. And the album, Baruch Hashem, the first album I put out became gold, and it was the first album, I think, that was put out by a religious artist in Israel which connected to a lot of secular crowd. It was played a lot on the secular radios and secular TV and the music stations. And I felt something inside, like the fact that I grew up in this secular school, in this secular environment, classical, rock, jazz, but then me being Jewish, connected to Hashem, connected to Judaism, I had a special language that I could speak to people around me a language that I got as a present, I think, from those years in high school. In those years, I got, when I was about 26, 27, no, I probably was more like 30. Yeah, I was even 31, 32, 33, no, my 30s, beginning of my 30s. I got this amazing offer. I was in New York conducting the symphony orchestra, and somebody was in the audience from Broadway, from the casting of Broadway, and said, have this great idea for you. We're putting up this show about Shlomo Carlebach, and maybe you should play Shlomo on this Broadway. Why don't you come with your family, live in New York, and we have this beautiful apartment for you. And it was very tempting. I was actually really the beginning of my career. And but he said, there's a few problems regarding women and dancing and singing and other tznius problems. But, we can organize everything. You can speak to your rabbi. And I spoke to my rav, and similar to what Alex said, my rav said, people are going to come see this show because of you, and is this like what you should be doing? There were many problems with the text and the ideas. So I said no. And, it was difficult also, but then again, I was whole with it. I was happy about that decision. And then, like a week or two later, I was sitting in my kollel. I try to divide my day between half day of learning until about 2 o'clock. Take my phones, put them outside, and I'm in a different world for about, try to do it for a few good hours. So I was sitting in a kollel. Somebody sitting next to me, a few weeks later, says to me, you know, this guy called Yaakov Shweki. He's, yeah, that's for him. Applause for Yaakov Shweki. And he's actually looking for, oh man, Alex. So he was looking for Sephardi music, and he knew that I grew up in a Sephardi neighborhood. He himself is a half-half. His father's Egyptian, from Egyptian descent, his mother's Ashkenaz, and he wanted to put out a Sephardi album. So this guy sitting next to me happened to know him, and he said, Yonatan, maybe you'll write some Sephardi songs, or like kind of, which I knew from growing up, as I told you. And I composed all these weird songs. I met up with him, and he was like, you know, this is not your forte, these songs. And I was about to leave, and he said, do you have maybe any song that you never played for anybody? I said, yeah, I have this song, V'isha Amda, that I composed for somebody else, and it never really worked out. And he said, play it for me. And actually, it went a little different. It was, the chorus was, the verse was pretty similar, like, V'hi she'amda lavotenu, V'hi she'amda lavotenu velanu. And then it ended like this, Shelo echad bilvad amad aleinu lechalotenu, V'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu miyadam. And a different chorus, Shelo echad bilvad amad aleinu, Shelo echad bilvad, something like that. And then at the end, like in Hey Jude of the Beatles, you know, na 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 na. I had a part going, without any words. So his producer was sitting there and he said, you know, Yonatan, I think I know, I figured out the problem of this song. Problem is the chorus you have is pretty bad. But the melody you have at the end, you should use the words V'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu miyadam for that melody. It fits really good. V'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu. So you know the ego of artists. I said to him, well, you're a producer, I'm a musician, nice to meet you, you're wrong, and I can prove it to you because I have to say matzilenu, matzilenu. So the words don't fit, thank you very much. And I went home, and he sent me a recording. He said, Yonatan, you should reconsider this. And I actually did, Baruch Hashem, and that's how this song came out. Just in a side point, I feel, you know, this was really, I feel it wasn't my composition because the song we sing growing up, right? Vehi she'amda, vehi she'amda, lavoiseinu velon, right? So if you know, the end of it goes, Ela she'bechol dor vador, omdim ale. Every generation, there's another pogrom, there's another Shoah, and we say like very silently, Ve'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu miyadam, almost like in a subtle way, almost like hiding it. And I felt Hashem said, what do you mean? Look at me, look at this. You're here, thousands of years, you've made it through everything. You're back in Israel. How can you sing? You have to sing, Ve'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu. So it wasn't even my idea. It kind of happened, you know? And now when I go around the country, and like the last war, I went to play for soldiers in Tzuk and you see like thousands of soldiers, secular soldiers, and women, men, screaming, Ve'akadosh baruch hu. You know, they don't believe in tanks anymore. You know, they know that we have a present. We have Hashem that's with us. And I feel that was like, Min HaShamayim. Anyway, so I have to end. This was just like an entree for tonight or for other speakers. Basically, I'll end with saying that I'm trying to, why I'm here, besides just wanting to be here and this being such a special place, that I think has to connect a little with what Alex, I think, does as a life. But I think I'm trying to say that it's possible to live a life which is true to yourself, true to your art, true to your talent, and being very good, trying to be very good at what you do, and then at the same time trying to, or actually firstly, obviously, to be connected to Hashem, to worship Hashem in a full way. Many people think it's a dissonant, or it could be opposing chas v'shalom. But I feel that it's actually a present. It's a present of, it gives me these hours that I sit and learn. That just being connected helps me compose, gives me a framework of bracha, and may that be my message. So thank you very much. Me and Alex will do one song together before you guys leave.
Dabrana, Shalom Bach.
Oy leman achai v'reyai, leman achai v'reyai, dabrana, Shalom Bach.
L'ma'am beis Hashem Elokeinu, avach shetov lach. L'ma'am beis Hashem Elokeinu, avach shetov lach.